So, welcome to Strong 4 of Level 1 Breath Master Certification. Aishe.
Hi. Blessings.
As I was mentioning in the review of your video you sent in, you're on point pretty much. It's just a matter of when you're doing the prayer hands, whether it's just the meditation or the movement, you want to keep the fingers in close together, and you want to go in the movement, you want to go as straight above the head as possible, elbow straight, and come down as straight as possible. You know, you don't want to hit yourself in the face, but you want to come close to the face, and you want to keep the thumbs together as close to the hands as possible. Finger, all of them basically just almost as if it's one finger. Close to the chest, eyes on the thumbs, and that's straight up and down versus out like this expands and increases the range of motion for the neck, especially the back of the neck, which is going to bring more synovial fluid and energy to all of those acupressure points that helps to open the spirit and remove a lot of issues. And then you think about a lot of times when people are in accidents, first thing, the two things they do when they're doing triage on the scene, they'll put a neck brace on,
Right.
because the area is very sensitive. And then you're talking about, you know, the connection between the head and the body. And, you know, if anything happens to the spine, you know, you got major issues for the rest of your life. And then the other thing they do is they give people oxygen. Because, you know, in a traumatic scenario, a lot of people aren't breathing, or they may have some type of impairment or something going on that has limited the amount of oxygen. And then they might not even have that much energy in their body to take full breaths. You know, so this is why it's crucial also that, you know, we do our breathing practices, because when your body is well practiced at a full deep breathing on a regular basis, you basically have more oxygen stores and your body's acclimated to taking fuller breaths. And that's something that you're going to find as somebody who has, you know, been labeled asthmatic, you know, is that you're going to have more oxygen stores, and you're going to basically, even when you're sleeping, your breathing pattern is going to be changed to one that's more in depth and more enriching. Any questions about anything that we've covered so far?
Yes, you also gave me a second assessment, like a second piece of feedback in the email. I did read the email, so I got the notes. I didn't understand what you meant by that second piece.
Okay, so when you're inhaling, okay, now, remember I told you about the 3 segments of the body, upper, lower, and middle?
Yes.
Okay, so when you're inhaling, the nostrils, especially right in here, when you inhale, you take through the nostrils. If there's tension or restriction in here, that means that you're going to have tension in the upper part of the body, which is more of the fight or flight region. So that's more tension and more stress, more tension and stress in the upper part of the face as far as the breathing aspects, more tension in the body in the upper aspects. So when you inhale and you have the tongue curl back and you take a full inhalation, you'll feel it in the back of the throat. I mean, the air will come through the nostril and you will feel it back in the throat, up there in the area of the uvula, where the air is going to come through the nostrils and hit that area behind the uvula, of course, as it enters into the body. So that would be a deeper portion or segment of the breathing apparatus as far as the head is concerned. And in turn, that means it's going to fill up the lower part, the lower regions of the breathing apparatus as far as the body cavity is concerned. And you were doing that when you were doing the prayer hands movement, because it got vigorous. So your breathing got vigorous. So even though you're having a vigorous breathing, like you feel it in here, but it's, I mean, you're going to feel it in there because of the fact that it's a vigorous breath. But when you actually get to going and your face is kind of contorting and you actually see this part of the face begin to sink in, that's a lot more tension and stress than you want in that part of the body, of the face, and also this part, you know. And that comes with practice, because as you noted early on with a number of the breathing exercises when you were doing the movement, even though you were doing movement, when you had the, you were doing it with the breath master technique, which is a deeper, fuller breath, the movements were more meditative. But obviously a rapid, fast-paced movement with rigor and vigor is not going to allow you to be in a meditative state.
Right.
So even though it's not going to allow you to be in a meditative state, you're taking fuller, deeper breaths in those quote unquote stressful moments allows you to not be as stressed. So that's the transference. When you get into a stressful situation, because you've adapted and mastered the fullness of the lungs and the breathing techniques, you're not as stressed in those situations. You know, you're activated, you're ready to move, the energy is there, but you don't have the stress level that you would have with all of the adrenaline that other people may have in a similar circumstance. So this is an adaptive process that, you know, will serve you in a number of different spaces and circumstances throughout the course of your life, as long as you stay practiced. And, you know, you're building a broad foundation, if you will, with these practices. Make sense?
Yep, that makes sense.
Okay, anything else?
I just noticed during my practice, it was much easier for me to feel with the 3 binds. It took time for me to actually feel those 3 binds while laying down. I felt them much easier when I'm sitting than I do laying down. And then I really had to like break down the sounds, and then I could feel myself with each different sound, like like how they hit each particular bind differently. Like with each sound, I could feel it stronger with a different bind. So that was just interesting. That's more of just a comment that I'm kind of observing and trying to figure out with my body and how to feel it while laying down, as much as I do while sitting.
Did you try any of those sitting on your feet where there was no contact with the perianal array as far as surface area is concerned?
What do you mean?
What I mean is sitting in a position like this.
Oh no.
Where there's no contact with surface area of this part of the body. So when you're doing lying down in the lying lotus, and you have your foot in the area of the perianal array, there's contact with the body.
Right.
So there's absorption of movement in that part of the body. And when you're sitting in a chair, the same thing. Your body is in contact with the surface, so the energy is not going to be as free flowing. But when you're in those positions, I think I mentioned that when you're in a kneeling position and you're sitting on your feet, there's no contact with the area of the perianal array, genital area, with the surface. So when you make those sounds in that space, it's gonna be a more vibrancy, a greater vibrancy, but it's gonna be subtle. And I like the fact that you're paying attention to what you're feeling in your body, because it takes that level of attention in order to be able to assess those things. A lot of people who don't take that kind of attention, you know, they're going through the movements and the flow and whatever, and it's like, okay, I got this, and they run on to the next thing. They don't get those nuances, so they don't get the benefits that come thereafter until long after they've practiced, where it just clicks for them from having consistent and continuous practice, versus somebody who is very observant and attentive and intentional with their observation and getting in touch with their body and getting in touch with that whole energetic flow. It happens for you more readily. You get a deeper awareness and a fullness of your experience that, you know, comes with that level of attention and attentiveness. So kudos to you. And I thank you for that. That's what I'm really looking for as far as as far as awareness, and also acknowledging that I'm in the presence of somebody who is ready to be truly a breath master. So again, kudos to you. Now, what we're going to do today is going to be further along the line of the whole vibrational experience. I'm going to add in another sound vibration. And then I'm going to add in, you know how we talk about raising the vibration, raising the vibration, raising the vibration? Mm-hmm. And it sounds like something that's so mystical in some spaces, and it sounds like something that's so difficult, because it's like, how do you raise the vibration of a whole people and a whole world? You know, it sounds very complicated, doesn't it? Mm-hmm. It ain't. Like I said, I keep things very simple and very practical. So when we talk about vibration, what are one of the things that we think about that vibrates?
Like speakers, music.
Which emits what?
Vibrations and sounds.
Sound. So sound is vibration. Mm-hmm. Okay. Very simple. If I want to raise the vibration using sound, what do I do?
Make sound and be louder and.
Okay, that would be a question for a musician. Higher octaves vibrate at a greater resonance. So you have a higher vibratory response or a higher vibration. Lower octaves vibrate at a lower rate. So you lower the vibration by lowering the octave. You raise the vibration by raising the octave. Oh, oh.
Simple.
Very simple. I mean, if you're in a space where there's a high-pitched sound, it's going to strike a nerve. Mm-hmm. And depending upon which nerve it strikes and what the person's disposition is, it could cause them to go into panic, you know, mass hysteria, all kinds of stuff. There's a part of DC that I haven't been to in a while, but when I was there, I was passing through on the bus on numerous occasions. I would hear this very high-pitched electrical sound, as if there was one of the boxes attached to one of the wires overhead was emitting this ee. Now, can you imagine living in that area? And this was in the Black neighborhood.
Of course.
You know, and it's like, why do these people have all of these dispositions and what have you? That's one of the reasons. So they're doing experiments, you know, because, you know, there's all kind of stuff that's happening all the time that, you know, we don't even pay attention to. And, you know, a sound being emitted, and the people are getting conditioned to, you know, ignore that. But, you know, you may ignore it, but on a sub and superconscious level, you're not ignoring anything. And it's having impact. So in turn, when you lower the sound vibration, you can slow people down and what have you. You know, raising the vibration has, I mean, everything has pros and cons. What I just showed you, what I just alluded to, was a way of raising the vibration that can cause irritation. You know, because it's not done in a meditative state, I'll put it like that, versus lowering the vibration and slowing people down, which is very beneficial. But then you can go too slow. You can have people so slow that anything could happen and they don't respond well because they're in too deep of a meditative state, or basically just too slow to move. No, that's a whole bunch of different ways of the impact of vibratory response. But what we're going to do is with the sound vibration is we're going to apply it as we do certain movements, and we're going to do some internal work and use those sound vibrations to cause vibration within our body, and invariably vibrate all of our organs and enrich and enliven them with sound and oxygen, because we're going to be doing some breath work with these, of course. So we talked about the benefits of the prayer hands, that whole scenario of just having your hands in that position and what that does for the body. We talked about the 3 octaves and how they impact the reproductive area of the body, and also the 3 segments of the body as far as vibration. And we talked about the fact that when you intensify, I mentioned this in your critique, I hope I mentioned it before, but if not, you definitely want to hear it now. When you intensify and extend longer the sound, when you go and you extend it as long as you can, you're going to intensify the activation of the abdominal muscles, because again, it takes those muscles to make that sound. And the longer you make that sound, the more you're going to engage those muscles. Same thing with the shh and the sss. And then when you add to that the squeezing of the muscles in the perianal array, or those binds, as you call them, some say locks, some say binds, whatever. So it's going to intensify this tightening of those muscles in that area, to the point where for men, you hear about benign prostate hyperplasia, which is swollen prostate, and how that could potentially be a precursor to prostate cancer. And in certain cultures in ancient times, they actually used to do prostate massage, which was only done with placing the finger up the rectum. Being a guy, not particularly fond of that scenario, I thought about how we could do this internally on our own. And I was told by the late Dr. Africa, well, we were told in the class, I didn't have a private conversation with him, that the only way to massage the prostate was to put the finger up the rectum and physically manipulate and so on. But what I found is that with certain movements, certain sound vibrations and what have you, and body postures, and putting more tension in that area, you can affect the massage. Obviously different than digital manipulation, but still relatively effective, especially if done consistent over time. And being that I'm 64 and a Black man, which they always want to say that's one of our primary issues, and my father having had that issue, my father-in-law has that issue, one of my brothers has that issue. I want to be aware of what it takes to keep that area healthy and practice those things. And so, along with the nutrients, there's also exercises and what have you. So these are things that you can also share as time goes on with a broader audience. So, any questions? Okay, any thoughts?
I was just kind of wondering, like, because I always, try to think about myself too, is when you were saying that it's squeezing that perineum muscle that with the sounds. Like what is the benefit for that for women?
The prostate and the uterus are the male and female reflection of the portion of the reproductive system. So when I say prostate for men, you can imagine the same thing for women. It's going to help strengthen and tone the uterus for women. And when I talked about the 3 squeezes before, I talked about the cervix, and I also talked about, I mean, that's the internal more so, well, I'll say a finite segment of the internal versus the broader aspects of when you do the 3 squeezes, as far as the mouth of the vagina, the cervix, and then the uterus. You know, those 3 broader portions of the reproductive system for women. And the root of the penis, the rectum, and then the prostate for men. And I don't know what would equate to the cervix for men. But when we do the breathing exercise that we're going to do today with the sound vibration, particular sound vibration, it's focused on this actual cervix itself. So when you do these this particular sound vibration, and you raise the octaves and lower the octaves, you're going to subtly feel, and this takes time to be able to assess for most people. And this is something obviously for women because we're talking about the cervix. You're going to feel the vibratory response in those 3 segments, the anterior, posterior, anterior, and the body of, and the posterior parts of the cervix more readily when you do the octaves with this particular sound vibration. Okay, so, and then we're going to do also something else where we're going to activate the area that we talked about earlier, as far as when we're moving the head back and forth. We're going to do some tapping in that area to further activate and open up that space. So those are the 2 primary things we're going to do today. And the first thing, sound vibration, is Aahhhhhh. And the reason why we're using Aahhhhh is because when I was in Dr. Africa's class, he told us that European folklore and fairy tales are all about sex. And we were like, huh? And then we were like, oh, what a surprise, right? Because you know those people are obsessed. So anyway, he told us the Yellow Brick Road was basically talking about the birth canal. You know, she tapping her heels, no place like home, no place like home. Going back to the womb. You know? Okay. Back to that divine space that we all began at. That there was no, you know, I mean, when you look at the movie and you analyze it, you know, when she woke up back in the bed and she was like, you know, told him about her experience. She said, and you were there, and you were there, and you were. She told him about all this trauma and drama that happened in that space. But when she went back home, none of that stuff existed. None of the trauma that she experienced and all of that stuff encumbered her at all. There was the memory, but there was not any of the baggage that came with it. So she went back to the womb. So that's the first time I went that deep with it. But anyway. I like it. Now I want to look at it again. So that basically put in my mind, because I had just come out of doing my comedic yoga certification. I had started doing my creating the breath master technique and doing my own thing as far as the movement and the knee raises and all that stuff. And, you know, had been doing the Om and all that stuff. Hadn't really done the into the 3 sounds yet. And then he says this about Oz and what have you. And I'm like, okay, Om is a sound vibration. And he's talking about the cervix, reproductive area. Maybe Oz is a thing that may activate the os, the cervical os. You've heard of the cervical os, right? The os is basically the lips on the cervix. You have the anterior and posterior. So you have the cervix, which is a tube, obviously, and on either end is an opening. And just like the lips of the vagina or the little teeny lips you see on the head of a penis, they're like little lips that open up on either end of the cervix. So, and that's called the cervical os, OS. And that's why he talked about the Wizard of Oz being a story about the birth canal, because we know the cervix as the actual birth canal.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Okay. Wow.
So with that, we're going to take one full breath master style, tip of the tongue, roof of the mouth, curl it back and inhale. And we're going to exhale Oz. Once again, curl the tongue back, inhale. Pay attention to what happened in your body. And Go back, inhale. This time we're going to squeeze when we make the sound. Inhale. And once more, and start earlier on the Z part of the sound.
Okay.
Pull the tongue back, inhale. And okay, relax. Other than that supreme meditative state that you found yourself in, what did you notice in your body?
My abdominal area, it like really pushes it in, like almost feels like my belly button is going to my spine. The amount of pressure that it feels like it's sucking in when I'm doing the sound, and even the Oz starts very early, that pressure of that abdominal is really working, almost to the point where it feels like almost some sit-ups. So I noticed that, and I definitely felt the vibration here and a lot of vibration here.
Did you, when you hit the zzz, did you feel it up in here?
I did.
Yeah.
Yep.
Now with the 6 healing sounds that they make with in the Taoist tradition, one of the sounds is a and winds up sounding almost like zzz. And when you do that buzzing, just say the word buzz.
Buzz.
You feel it here. So that Z sound basically vibrates the crown chakra, the whole head, the cranium, you know, which is going to cause, you know, some brain stimulation. So when you added the squeeze, did you feel anything different versus when you're doing the squeeze.
Versus what? Versus the squeeze?
Yeah.
Um,
I know you just had this one experience, so you know there's a lot more to come. I'm just curious as if you notice anything different right now.
I just continue to feel like this amount of pressure, honestly, in my abdomen, and it just like intensified it. It intensified it, almost like there was just a lot of energy. Like that's what the energy was just stronger when I like something was also pushing up.
So even though you felt the vibration, the literal vibration more readily in the head and in the chest area, there was vibration that was going on down in that area as well, in the abdominal and in the reproductive area, throughout that entire body part or those body parts. Now, your body is in contact with the chair. So now let's see what happens when there's no contact with that area. So I want you to get down on the floor on your yoga mat and get into the position that I talked about, where your body's not making contact with the surface area. So here, there's no contact.
Yep.
Now we're gonna do the same thing. Tip of the tongue, move from mouth, curl it back, inhale. With the squeeze. Go back, inhale once again. And release. One more time, feel the back inhale. Release it and exhale. Okay, relax and breathe. Did you notice the difference in the vibrational feeling that in this sitting position?
Oh yes, much more intense vibration in the perineum and that area that it's like I feel the buzzing. It's still continuing.
And as far as not only out under here, but in the back, in this area, do you feel the vibration in this area?
I feel it more so now, like the after effects.
So that's that continuous reverberation. So it actually goes up the spine. You can feel it traveling up the spine as it's vibrating. And again, that's one of the things the Taoist practitioners talk about, the microcosmic orbit, that energy, and what the Kemetic yoga people call it the Jed. It's like the obelisk is a symbol of the spine, and the vibration going up the spine is part of the whole microcosmic orbit, going up and vibrating the crown chakra, so that you get that expansive opening, and so that you can download, receive, whatever you want to call it. It's kind of like activating the antenna, if you will. So it has a lot of metaphysical aspects to it. Okay, so
I felt a lot in my ears too,
Mhm.
the vibration.
Speaking of the ears, there's a misconception, and they actually call it a disease or dis-ease, tinnitus or whatever it's called, tendinitis or tinnitus, ringing of the ears.
Mm-hmm.
And they've messed people up with just that misnomer because it's not a disease. Our ears hear sound.
Right.
So if there's a constant but subtle high-pitched sound that some people hear and some people don't, that doesn't mean that they got a lot of nerve damage. That can happen with nerve damage, yes. However, we hear sound on a multitude of levels. Our ears are not as sensitive as other animals, dogs, cats, animals that live in the wild that really need that sense of hearing because, you never know where danger is coming from, and then, in the ocean and what have you, sound carries much further in the water. So there's a greater level of sensitivity of feeling sound, actually feeling sound in your body, similar to when a baby's in the womb feeling the sound vibration because they're floating in that ocean of amniotic fluid. So that hearing of sound, we're actually hearing tones of nature, tones of the cosmos, tones of the earth. And I learned this guy was talking about, he called it a galactic tone. And everybody has their own particular attunement, so everybody hears their own galactic tone. And of course, with that sound vibration, it puts you in a space of certain type of energetic response and certain attributes that some would call, benefits, powers, or dispositions, or whatever. So also with that, case in point, I was telling this guy, I went to this retreat and this guy was playing these little bells and cymbals and making all kinds of sounds, doing a sound bath, with the bowls and all this stuff. And there was one particular sound when he hit this thing, I was like, that's the sound I hear all the time. He's like, that's the letter F. He said, that's the sound of the earth. I was like, whoa. So the earth is talking to me all the time. I'm hearing the earth. And, one of the things that one of my colleagues said to me, he said, man, when I think about you, I think about how grounded you are. And I'm like, wow. He thinks about how grounded I am. And I've heard that from other people. And I'm hearing the earth all the time. So I have that direct connection all the time. I'm hearing it now.
How did you develop that? How do you find that?
What you're doing now with all of these, the level of attention that you're paying to what's happening in your body, you just basically realize that it's there. It's there all the time. It's just a matter of whether or not you notice it. Like I said about the high-pitched sound that they had in the neighborhood and what have you, that people have gotten conditioned to ignore, but it's still there and it's still impacting them. The same thing with that. I had a guy who had epileptic seizures, and he said that sound was always with him. It was always driving him crazy. I told him, I said, look, man, I said, that sound is not something to drive you crazy. That's just your connection to, something beyond what it is that these people can comprehend. And I explained it to him, and I actually guided him through a meditation and had him access that sound. I told him how you could actually tune into it to the point where you can actually increase the volume, and then you can tune out of it where you decrease the volume in your head, because basically it's like a vibration that you're attaching yourself to or detaching yourself from. And got him to the point where he's able to control how loud that sound is in his head. Therefore, how it impacted him as far as his stress level was concerned. And then I did that in one meditation. So, awareness helps with recalibration, and paying attention and becoming attuned to, these things, these fine nuances of life, i.e. the breath, i.e. sound, helps to move you in one direction or another. Basically, it's just part of us being. And having a greater awareness allows us to be more natural or supernatural, whatever, cosmic selves. Any questions?
I'm just processing all that you just said.
Now, something I want you to do as you process, I want you to think about not only implications for yourself, but implications for those around you, implications for humanity, and implications for how these tools can be used in other settings with other people. Because this is beyond us. This is not just for you. This is beyond you. This is about the S that comes after the us, the pluralization, the we. This is about everybody. So think about how this plays out for, family, relationships, community, society, because everything's connected and there is no break in between. So that connection that we share with everybody sets up how everybody, everything impacts us and how we impact everything and everybody.
Yeah.
So always be mindful of that. And,
yeah,
with all of these little nuances and what have you, think about, y'all's daughter and, how she will benefit from these lessons early on in life. I mean, you're like, what, 30, whatever, 25, what, right now, experiencing this, and it took me till, shortly before now, I'm 60, about to be 64 in a few days. And, had I been given this information as a little boy, given my inclination to gravitate towards it and find it out, who knows where I would be at this stage in my life. So imparting this to that little baby girl, I mean, even the sound vibrations in the room, like I was telling you about, when my granddaughter was born, she was born into hearing the sound of the breath in that space. I mean, I was audible enough to fill the space where everybody was feeling it, so, all of these little opportunities that we have, begin to take advantage of some of it, share it with your wives and so on. That is the correct term, right? I don't know what y'all status is.
That's a good term.
Okay. So, that is, I mean, there's always opportunities. So always be mindful of what it is that you're learning, what it is that you're gaining, how you're growing, and how you can assist others in that process, simply by just sharing a small amount of information or what have you. And then getting feedback like I'm doing now, because this is a constant energetic exchange. And that's what we're doing all the time with everybody, that we're in contact with. So being mindful and aware of what it is that we have in the way of tools and simplicity that can shift things is very profound, and I'm glad to be in this space. Okay, yeah. So raising the octaves. Ready?
Ready.
Tip of the tongue to the roof of the mouth, curl it back, inhale. We're gonna start low and we're gonna go high. We're gonna squeeze in the process. And as low as possible. Go back, inhale once more, as low as possible. Once more, so we're doing threes. Go back, inhale. going mid-range now. Curl it back. Inhale. Once again, curl it back. Inhale. And remember to squeeze on the exhale. And back. Inhale. And notice where you're feeling this vibration in your body in this process. And go back. Inhale. We're going to go high. And go back. Inhale. And release. And last time, curl it back. Inhale. And relax and breathe. How
Yeah.
you feel?
Like really buzzy, lots of oxygen. So, you know, when you get that little bit of that dizzy feeling because there's so much oxygen that came through the body. So I feel a little bit of that right now. But it was really nice because it really is as simple as you were describing it. Like with each sound, you feel the vibrations in those parts. The lower, you feel it lower. That mid, you feel it here. And the higher, you feel it here.
Fantastic. That's exactly what I was hoping to hear from you, because that's basically what now I don't know if you noticed, you probably noticed on the replay, maybe I don't know so much at this distance that I'm away from the camera, but when I started with the lower octave, my body started doing this. That oscillation, that vibration going up the spine.
Yep.
Causes, you know, the body to move when you are so relaxed and, you know, conditioned. That's more so for what I guess it is for me, because I've been doing this for a while, that my body just moves on its own with the vibratory response. And quite often it's that whole spiraling and what have you. And then when I shifted to the mid-range, when I did it the second or the third time, as I inhale, my body actually reversed and started going the other way momentarily. It's some people would say weird, but you know, it's different, and it's, you know, kind of special and intriguing just to, have that happen in your body and then be aware of it, but in a way that is not something that causes you to go, oh, give you the heebie-jeebies, and like a lot of people, things that they think are so mystical and all of this stuff, they get put off by it and they want to run from it or whatever, when it's just natural and part of doing and being, so that's just something that I accept and appreciate, because everybody doesn't have those opportunities because of the way that we're conditioned to not be in tune, literally in tune to our bodies and everything that's around us. And then when you got to the higher vibrations, for me, this particular time, I noticed that the vibration was up in here, but it wasn't as hyper, if you will, as it was before when I was doing the regular, when we first started with the Aahhhhhh. The higher the octaves, the more it moved up the spine, but also the reverberation wasn't like this. It was more like a finer, lighter reverberation.
I felt that too. Mine was like,
yeah, yeah. It's interesting. So, let me see what we got here. Oh yeah, we're good on time. So now there are different applications with that, with these practices, as far as what it is that you want to do metaphysically. Not that I've explored that tremendously, because I'm not really concerned about doing magic and manifesting a bunch of stuff, but I do know that magnets draw things to them, and I know that the reason why they do it is because of the level of vibration and the pull that happens in that space. So as we're doing these vibratory things and what have you, we're creating a resonance that is magnetic. And and that's basically the alignment process. We're aligning with things of a vibratory response or a vibratory frequency that is in the space, or we're moving into, whether it's in the space we're moving into, or we're aligning, or just coming together, however you want to term it, of similar vibratory entities and energies. So we can move away from things that may bother us by shifting into a different vibration. And that's a simple statement. You may have heard it in other terms and what have you, or well, hey, the vibe is off. No man, I ain't vibing with that. This ain't my vibe.
All of that.
And we say that all, those things you hear all the time, almost like a colloquialism, without even thinking about the fact that you're talking about a cosmic occurrence that has deep attachment to our spiritual alignment. I remember one time I was at the place I was working at the time, this wellness center. This young girl came in and she was crying to the point of snot running out of her nose, talking about, why is this always happening to me? She was just gotten into DC at Union Station, and she's standing there on a cell phone, and a guy ran up and grabbed her phone and ran with it.
Oh man.
And she was crushed, and she had me call some folks and whatever, and and it was just tragic to watch this girl in the throes of this level of trauma. And the fact that she said, why is this always happening to me, says that she's constantly attracting those types of experiences. She was basically stuck in massive victimhood. She couldn't even walk down the street without somebody getting triggered into turning her into a victim. Especially predators. You walk into a predatory space and what have you, predators, it's a vibratory scenario that comes out that's like, oh, easy prey,
Right.
So there's constant alignment, and this is a way of changing all of that. I mean, I wish I could have just did something to for that young lady in the moment, but she was so deep in the throes of that, there was nothing I could do except, support her moving out of that in a casual way, simply with a phone call to somebody else.
Right. Probably enough for her. But that was my question, like for someone who is more aware, but still happens to maybe get into that state, what is something that we can do in the moment of that, where if you can't, all of a sudden get down on your knees and get into the breath work, but what is a breath, or what can you do to change that vibration in that moment? What could she have done for herself?
The first things I've shared with you, the breath master technique, changing the rhythm and the pacing and the depth of her breath, because that would have changed the response in her body, in her physiology. And with that comes and goes everything. Because as she's standing there, she's not getting hardly any oxygen in her body. So she's staying in that stressful panic state. Same as with an asthmatic, a person having a panic attack. You get them to change their breath, their breathing, and immediately things will begin to shift. And the longer they practice in that moment, the changing in the depth and the pacing of their breath, the further away it's going to move them from that state of so much trauma and all that, because the physiology is going to shift. And the physiology shifts, so does the psychology and the psychological impact of whatever is happening. One of the best things you can do for a person is to breathe with them.
Why is that?
Because of everything I just said. When you breathe with them, you're not going to breathe the same thing that they're breathing. You're going to help them change their breath. Remember when I think I said this about catching up with your breath, or catching up? Yeah, I did say this several times.
Yeah.
Catching up with whatever pace that you're moving, using the breath. If you're in a fast paced heartbeat and rate of breathing or whatever, you start doing that same rate and intentionally with the breath, and then slow it down and allow the physiology to shift. And so again, one of the best things you can do for a person is to breathe with them, i.e. guide their breath, guide them into a different energetic space using the breath. And that's also why I sent the sound of the breath master technique, because basically that's me guiding your breath. That's me not even being there, but the sound that I'm making, that I recorded, aiding your shifting into a different space energetically.
It does that for sure. Yeah.
Again, simplicity, because when you thought about that question and what have you, was talking about all of the trauma and the drama and the positions and all of this stuff, and didn't even think about the breath, even though you have the tools and but you haven't linked it up as readily to the point where it's become germane to you yet. By the time this is done, or as this continues, I'll say it like that, because you're going to continue in your practice, it'll click for you and it'll be automatic. I mean, you go up to somebody and you put your hand on their back and what have you, they're crying and whatever, it's at a funeral or whatever, they just lost a loved one and what have you, you can't do anything, you're just there to comfort them. And if you've observed a similar situation, if you think back, the person who was grieving was probably short breaths. And the person who came to comfort them was doing fuller, deeper breaths.
Mm-hmm.
And as they were comforting them, typically when you comfort somebody, where do you lay your hand?
Right on their back, right in the middle.
In the area of the what?
The heart.
And lungs.
The lungs. Yeah, that's true.
So
yeah.
When you put your hand there, through your hand, you're putting energy into their lung and heart area, which is where they need it.
Right.
Because that energy in that area has dwindled, and they're in a suffering mode and a grief mode, and the lungs house the energy for grief, heart, love. So they need some love. They need the grief lifted up off of them. So just by putting your hand there, and you already being in a more relaxed state, shifts the energy. That's another thing. Touch. As far as humans go, we are communal beings, and we need touch. People are suffering from touch deprivation in this crazy society now, and like, you better not touch anybody,
Right.
I had an incident years and years ago after I had this. I was in an accident, literally, I hit somebody's bumper. No damage or anything. Young brothers. The dude on the passenger side, he mean mugging. He like, and dude who was in the driver's side, he came out, to see what was up and stuff. Like, oh man, I'm sorry, bro. I took my eye off of the thing. I didn't see you stopping, what have you. I was slowing down because he's coming to the light, but I didn't know you stopped. And so I apologize. Are you all right? And I put my hand up here. And in a situation like that, you don't be touching nobody. But I just did it. Oh, you're all right, bro. With that heartfelt thing. And he was like, oh man, it's all good, cool and stuff. And he got back in the car, and the dude was like, man, he's like, man, chill out. And I don't know what that normal dynamic is, but typically it doesn't go that way. But that was a momentary lesson for me, and it serves to answer your question. You breathe, and if it's a scenario where you can, you embrace. Excuse me.
So since you can attract things to you like the magnet, are you saying that the breath also can, if you're using the breath work techniques, breath mastery, and all the breaths that we've been practicing, you are able to then build a barrier for yourself so that bullshit, the world doesn't even contact you, because you have built a spiritual barrier over you? Are you saying that breath work builds that spiritual barrier?
It's called an auric field.
It's called a what? Say it one more time.
Field. Your auric field. Back in the day when I was growing up and watching Star Trek, they called it a force field.
Oh yeah, my mom watched that all the time.
and for folks in your generation with all you Jedi mind tricks, it's called the Force. And of course, as they say, may the Force be with you. Yeah, and the Force is with you at all times. It's just a matter of how you wield the Force, and whether or not you allow the Force to just overcome you. And it gets down to a minute microscopic level of the fact that everything is energy, and everything and all energy is vibration. And the Force is the force of vibration. The vibratory response. All right, so let me see now. We're going to go into tapping the celestial drum. Okay. Now, when it comes to tapping, basically, similar to the breath, the rate that you tap is going to cause a reverberation. And tapping, you've heard of emotional freedom technique or tapping?
Yes.
Okay. Have you experienced it at all? Okay. So you know that when you tap right here, it's going to cause vibration and energy to move in that area. So the energetic or metaphysical response for tapping that energy point or that acupressure point is going to move whatever it's attached to. and then you move it up, different body parts and whatever, side of the head, top of the head, and all this, governing vessel, conception vessel, in order to activate those points and cause that energy to connect and realign. So you shift the emotions that have to do with the entire body, because you look at those points in particular, when you're just tapping here and tapping here, in the cleft above the lip, the top lip, and the cleft below the bottom lip. Those 2 points are the end or beginning points of the conception vessel and the governing vessel. And then if you squeeze, like they don't talk about this, but if you squeeze the muscles of the perianal array, which is the area where the other beginning end of those points, because the conception vessel goes here, comes around and meets at the area between the genitals and the rectum, and the conception vessel goes from here down and to that same point. So manipulating the vibration in those spaces causes the energy to cycle up the spine, down the forehead, down the front of the body, and so on. So these are simple things that we're doing, but they're having dynamic impact, and they're helping to realign your whole spirit. And also, I talked about up the spine, down the front of the body. You're talking about the 7 chakras also. So you're doing a vibrational chakra alignment. So now, let me slide back forward here. A bit closer. Make sure. Let me know if you can see me clearly or if I need to get even closer. With tapping the celestial drum, basically, a head is a box, basically. And it's a box that's got several openings. When you close those openings and you squeeze those openings, or just close them, you basically block off several senses. Close your mouth, sense of taste. Close your nose, sense of smell. Close your eyes, sense of sight. Close your ears, sense of hearing. There's only one other other sense left, the sense of touch. And when you close off the sound, the ear, when you put your fingers in your ears, you close off the sense of sound. That sound gets trapped inside that box. And this is something that came to me, and something I'll be I thought about sharing for folks who can't hear the sound of the inhalation, is to put their fingers in their ears as they're curling their tongue back and inhaling, and they'll hear the sound of the inhalation more readily. And that will give them an idea of what it's supposed to sound like outside of their head. So I want you to put your fingers in your ears and then do the breath master technique and listen to the different, and take your fingers out and do it with your fingers out, and listen to the difference in the volume of the sound that you hear on the inhalation.
Okay.
Go ahead on your own. Take the fingers out. Pull the tongue back, inhale. Release it and exhale. Now tell me what you noticed as far as the difference between the two.
That metaphor that you used was perfect, of thinking of it as a box, because that's what it felt like when I was, especially with that, just starting with the exhale. The exhale, when I did it with my ears unclosed, it felt like it was going out. And when I did it with my ears closed, it all felt like it was like vibrating in this area. It stayed right here. And the inhale, I could actually hear it, and I could feel even the vibration coming up here, like this area was filling, rather than it just, I can hear it less when my ears are uncovered.
Did you notice that when you exhale with your fingers in your ears, you could hardly hear the exhalation sound, versus when you when you had the fingers out of your ears?
You could hardly hear it when I had it out?
When on the exhalation, with your fingers in your ears, you could hardly hear the sound of it.
Yeah, I could hardly hear it. I just felt it. Yeah.
Reason why, and this is coming to me, is that when your fingers, the inhalation sound is an internal mechanism. So you're hearing it when you block off the external sounds and you close off inside, you lock that, you're basically hearing what's happening more so internally, because there's no external and what have you. But when you take your fingers out of your ears, then you're accessing the external, and the is an external sound. That sound is being projected outward.
Yes, that's what it felt like.
Yeah. So with tapping the celestial drum, one of the things we're going to do is we're going to block out sound. We're not going to put our fingers in our ears, but we're going to cup our hands like so, and we're going to place them over our ears lightly. We're not going to press. We're not going to press our hands flat. We're going to cup them and place it over. So just listen as I explain before we start actual practicing, because if your hands are there, you're not going to hear me as readily. So the celestial drum is basically this area in the back of the head, the area below the occipital protrusion. So you got that little nugget right there, That's the celestial drum. So when you're tapping, it's sending a reverberation to the brain. Now, inside the head, in that particular area, is the hypothalamus, the hippocampus, and deeper in the pineal, and all of those. I mean, you can look those up. They have some serious spiritual connotations, all of those parts of the brain. And when you're tapping it, and this is why it's called the celestial drum, because you're tapping that, you're basically tapping into the cosmos, and you're awakening your whole cosmic connection. And when I talked about earlier, when I talked about the whole magnetic thing, and we got into the whole push and pull, I also mentioned the whole thing of I either mentioned or I alluded to, I think I alluded to manifestation. You got a lot of people trying to manifest all kinds of things, you know, and one of the things about manifestation is, and a lot of these manifestation practices and groups and what have you, they heighten the level of emotion around whatever it is they want to attract to them. So they're increasing the energetic vibratory response and magnetizing these things to draw them in to them. The whole vision board process and all of that's about magnetizing and using energy and vibration to pull things to you, you know. And you alluded to the whole thing of using that same scenario to create a field around your body that repels things that you don't want. So when I learned of this tapping the celestial drum, I was in a seminar and these young brothers was teaching this thing, and one of the brothers said that he had been told that when King Solomon wanted to make a great decision, he would go into his own meditation and process. And one of the things that he did, excuse me, to make sure he made a wise decision, King Solomon, wisest man, was tapping the celestial drum. So he could tune in to the cosmic vibration and make the best possible decision for the best possible outcome. So I was like, wow, that's awesome. So that stuck with me, obviously, and it's become part of what it is that I teach. So we're going to tap the celestial drum, and it's a couple of things. Like, I'm going to send you a video. It's an old video of back when I first started with the rites process, and I was given this assignment, and I brought that to the Healing Lodge and Children of Two Shields. It was raw, and I did the 3 octaves, and I did the tapping of the celestial drum, and I also did squeezing of the sphincter muscles. I talked about closing off the eyes and the mouth and the nose and what have you. Well, the mouth and the eyes have sphincter muscles, as well as the muscles in the perianal area. They have sphincter muscles. The rectum, for women, the vagina, they have sphincter muscles. And when you close one sphincter muscle and you close another, it actually causes a greater level of contraction in both or all of them. So I was doing, and you'll see it, I was doing the squeezing of the eyes and the muscle of the perianal array at the same time as doing the 3 octaves. And you talked about the lightheadedness you just experienced when we were doing the breath work earlier. I was high. I was like, I mean, and I hadn't experienced that before in that space. So anyway, it puts you in a euphoric state. So there's a lot that you can do with this in the way of manifesting. If you get in a circle with some people, you can imagine if you are vibrating like that, what will happen if there's a group. And since y'all, it's 3 of you, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow. 3 of y'all in the circle vibrating, man, ain't no telling. I mean, y'all already manifesting all kind of stuff anyway, and this is something that will augment you all's capability and give you all major power tools as far as energetic movement. I don't want to say manipulation because it has a negative connotation, even though without the connotation, it's basically what's happening. You're moving sound vibration in order to create something. And then the fact that you're talking about activating the womb space, and you got several wombs activating together, that is the divine creative source of life on this planet. For all animals, except for those who, reproduce, well, even those that reproduce asexually, it's a womb thing. And this is why, quick sidebar, this is why I was so traumatized when I came to DC as a young man. I got out of the military, I came here and I rode the subway for the first time, and I just wanted to see the city, and I didn't want to get out of the system and keep paying to go back in. So I rode from one end to the other, and I would stand at the doorway, at the entryway of the station, and I would watch people going in and out. I'm talking early in the morning, all throughout the day, afternoon, evening, what have you. I just went and I just watched people all day from, inside this station. And I saw massive, massive, massive amounts of Black women going into government and corporate buildings, taking all of their creative energy. And most of them were doing administrative work, which is the backbone, or should I say, the cerebral and womb space of any entity. Because if you don't have good administration, you don't have no entity, period.
Right.
And I was I was traumatized when that revelation hit me. I was like, man, they're using Black women to create and maintain and recreate their world. You know, and so coming out of that, you know, I was like, when those women retire, a lot of them just shrivel up and die because they've gotten used up. But then you have people that are in such a good health that they have a life after that. And can you imagine if women coming out of that space, and also now a lot of young women who don't even go into that space, particularly they have their own businesses and what have you, exercising their own creative force, if you will, for themselves, that we'll have a different view of the world, a different world. And that's what I'm looking forward to happen with this work and with the awakening that we are creating. So I thank you. Now let's get to work. I talk a lot, don't I? So now the other thing, we're gonna cup our ears, and I talked about tapping here. So when we're tapping, what we're gonna do is we're gonna cup our hands over our ears, and we're gonna slide our hands back to a point where our fingers touch right in that area. So I'll cup our ears, slide our hands back, fingers touch. Then we're gonna open a little space between our fingers so that when we tap, our fingers aren't hitting each other. And we're gonna use these two fingers, the middle finger and the index finger. And we're gonna tap at the rate of the heartbeat. So we're gonna tap, 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 tap. So inside, what we're gonna hear is dum, 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 dum. Because that heart energy is what we want to align with. And then we're gonna create in that process, the obvious heart-brain connection. And so as we inhale, we're gonna start tapping. And as we exhale, we're gonna squeeze. We're gonna start with just the breath master technique for a couple of breaths. Then we're gonna do the Aahhh vibration for a couple of breaths. Then we're gonna do the 3 octaves with the Aahhh vibration. Okay? Okay. And as far as squeezing the eyes, as you squeeze the muscles of the perianal, that's optional. You don't have to right now. But you know, in your personal practice and what have you, as you expand on what you're picking up here, do that, and just embrace what it is that you experience in that process. Now, would it be better for you if I were to turn around and you see the back of my head as I'm doing this, or I don't know, because I talk a little louder when I turn around because I know that my voice is being projected in the opposite direction. Can you hear me well enough when I turn my head around?
I can still hear you really well, yeah, if you turn around.
So I'm going to turn around then.
Okay.
So you can see it well. Now, when you put your hands over your ears, obviously you're not going to be able to hear me as readily. So you got the process. Let me just do the process one time before we start, so you can see and know while your ears are open.
Okay.
I cup my hands, I place them over my ears. I slide my fingers back so they touch just below the occipital bun or protrusion. I separate my fingers about a half inch or less. Place the tip of my tongue to the roof of my mouth. I curl that back and I inhale. Now begin to tap at the rate of the heartbeat. The lungs full, I release my tongue, drop my jaw, and I exhale. And then continue to the tongue, roof of the mouth, and so on. And then I add in the sound vibration to the Aahhhs. And then from there, the higher vibration, and then the low vibration, mid-range, then higher octave. Okay, you ready?
Ready.
Okay. Cup your hands, place them over your ears. Slide them back till the fingers touch. Separate them slightly. Place the tip of the tongue to the roof of the mouth. Curl it back and inhale. Begin tapping. Release the tongue, drop the jaw, exhale. Tip of the tongue, roof of the mouth, curl it back, inhale. Gonna go into the Aahhh vibration and the squeeze. So the tongue back, inhale. We're gonna go to the lower octave. Once more, the lower octave. So back, inhale. Really feel those lungs. And go back, inhale, and we're gonna go mid-range. And once more, curl it back, inhale. Curl it back, inhale. We're gonna go high. And curl it back, inhale. Last one. Bring your hands down and relax.
Wow.
That's a word.
That's like having literally like internal tuning forks.
Exactly. Exactly.
Mm. Yeah, it's very powerful. Oh,
So man, I'm speechless myself.
Yeah.
Well, I pretty much said, oh, one thing. Even though
Wow.
I said tap at the pace of the heartbeat, did you notice that as you were tapping, depending upon what octave you were making, the fingers wanted to move faster or slower?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So,
I do.
yeah, in the video, I didn't control my finger movement. I allowed it to move with the vibration. And when I went to the very high in that video, you're gonna see I was where I wasn't. Oh, I was. Oh, I mean, so the sound was like, I felt weird making that high pitch of sound as a guy. But anyway, as I did that, my fingers went crazy, like, and so that vibration was so high that I was literally high.
I believe it. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So
Yeah.
that's the power of the breath and some of the things that we do as breath masters, and what it is that we are bringing to the people.
I really love one because it's just exactly like you said, that really just attunes all of the chakras as well. You really go through and you can feel the attunement happening with each chakra. And it's just great. It's just a great tool because depending on what chakra you're working with, you can do one more, you could do one, you can play with it. So it's really awesome. I really like that a lot. Thank you for that.
You're welcome, and thank you for that assessment and that insight and your level of insightfulness. I appreciate that immensely. Now, everybody doesn't get that, and a lot of people actually are going through the motions and what have you. It's like, well, I'm learning this stuff and whatever, but everybody's in their own space and stuff will come to them when it comes to them. So when you're doing work on the level that you guys are doing with other high vibrational beings, it's going to allow you all to do your work more profoundly. One of the things that I particularly was enthused about when I was first invited to work with the women back in 2013, I think that was the first clan of that at the beginning of this iteration of the Healing Lives journey with the women. I was charged by Mama Z to do some things. And I put all this stuff together. I did like I think I sat with them for like 2 hours that day. And I went through it, the majority of what it is that I've shared with you over the course of the last month. And it was an awakening for me. It put me on in earnest on the path that I'm on now. So I'm grateful for her level of creative ability, and whenever I'm in a group of women, I call it the sacred womb space of creation, because I honor and acknowledge that's what it is, so that set me on the path and also gave me the opportunity to realize, my potential as far as what it is that I can do for humanity. And, me sharing these same things puts other people in that same space. The greatness that I'm bringing, you can bring now. With your nuanced stamp and flow on it, and the space and the people that you're going to be aligned with. I mean, you're from Mali, you're under the Dogons. Can you imagine what type of cosmic connection they have, and that's in your blood and in your DNA and your lineage for I don't know how many generations already. And then the whole Jamaican maroon thing, with that, ready for the times to, fight and whatever, you're a high vibrational being showing up, period. And the fact that you've already begun your practice, and then to have this added to your toolbox, it's like there's no limit to the impact that you will have beyond what it is that I may have if I'm lucky. I'm no lucky. Anyway, lucky enough to be able to not be woke, but quote unquote, have this awakening. So I appreciate you. And that's pretty much it for our lessons. Any questions? I got to think further on, close out, like I said, will be simple. What I want you to think about as you go through your practices and what have you over the course of the next strong, and send me your video and what have you. I want you to think about what it's going to look like in the, I like Mama Z's word, in the liminal space.
Yes, I love that.
Between level 1 and level 2 training. How are you going to work with these, and what it's going to look like as far as you preparing yourself for the level 2 when we bring somebody else on board for you to literally teach and me to watch you teach and guide your teaching process and give input and feedback as you go through that process. So yeah, we'll have our closeout next strong, and I'm not sure if I have your physical address, but I'm going to need your physical address in order to be able to send you your level 1 certification.
I can send that to you.
Trying to think if there's anything else. Can you think of anything else in the moment? Questions, comments, thoughts?
No, just gratitude.
Yeah, I am so grateful, and I appreciate this opportunity. So thank you, thank you, thank you.
Yes, thank you.
It's kind of strange because being in that vibrational space, and it's like, what do I do for the rest of the day now?
Right. Every time I practice, like in the morning, I vibrate, and that's what I've noticed actually, because when I like to practice in the morning, I vibrate so high, I'm feeling good. So, and it's something that, and I notice if I don't practice, like I can feel the energy kind of, like at the end of the day, like I need to still do that breath work at night, or that it's not as strong. Like I can see it kind of going down throughout the day when I'm affected by different things in the world. That's why I was really talking about like building that aura fields and like really concentrating on that so that I'm not as affected by so many things that are happening in the world.
And one thing, as you mentioned that, and what came to mind earlier, and thank you for refreshing that memory for me, empaths. Women are natural empaths. You all are a vortex. You are open,
it's
literally,
so true.
for everything to come into you.
Yes.
So in turn, everything will invade your space if you aren't, quote unquote, setting up some type of, I don't even want to call it a block, if you're not closing your energetic space.
Right.
So that
big one
and everything doesn't just pervade you. So right. As an empath, it's imperative that you do this work. And the thing about that is this: the more you build internally, the more you begin to project rather than receive. Because the way the antenna and the satellites and the radar disc and all those things work is they project and they receive. You have a projector and a receiver. So if you are focused on projecting, you're receiving less. Now, I would caution, and you know people who are like this, that you just don't become a projector all the time to the point where you can't receive.
Right.
You know those people who every time you see them, they got something to say, they talking and talking, and then when you try to get a word in edgewise, they don't hear nothing you're saying.
Yes.
They're stuck in projection mode. So being mindful and aware of all of these nuances and of exchange, because it's all energetic communication. Verbs, words, sound, vibration, it's all I mean, that's a verbal communication, but it's all verbal, vibratory, energetic conversation, but it's all energetic interplay and conversation that we're having at all times with everything around us, even those books sitting behind you, you know. So being aware of that as an empath, you want to build your inner strength.
Right.
Because the stronger you are, the less things will impact you.
Do you do that through breath work or eating, like through all of it? Like, how do you?
Everything. Because everything is what?
Energy.
Exactly. And we're talking about the alignment of what? Energy.
Energy.
Yeah, because when you talk about stuff coming at you, you're talking about energy just
right.
invading your space.
Right.
But if you are, you know, think about the golden child, or you know, that halo and that glow around us.
Right.
When you think of that, you don't think of stuff just willy-nilly running through up in there and all that.
Right.
That's emitting from inside out. So if you are glowing and projecting such a profound light, it's going to affect everything around it to the point where it's going to pervade any and everything around it, more so than it being dimmed by everything around it. And that's what happens when you all of those things pervade you. They literally dim your light.
Right.
So what do? Keep your light shining. This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. That's basically it. When did you all go see Baba Aahhh?
No.
You heard of him, right? Okay. When we first met Baba Aahhh, I'm gonna go ahead and turn this off right now, because this is information that the other people, the cyber people, don't need to know. So